Well, very good evening. Thanks for the opportunity to present here. This is very much a first-time presentation for us at ShareSoc, and I'm grateful for Tim, who's in the audience, and as a shareholder, hope you didn't mind me saying that, Tim, for introducing us to ShareSoc some time ago. So this is very much an introductory presentation. We're a brain disease therapeutics company. I'll say a bit about the name, given that you started there. Thera means to treat medically, of course, as in therapeutics, and Cryf, with a V sound at the end, is strength in Welsh. Thera is also the name of the submerged caldera of the volcano in Santorini. So we hope we're going to give you a strong eruption in the share price in the coming days and years, should you wish to invest. So we're on AIM. The details are there on the slide, and I'll try this very digital, non-Jaguar. Here we go. So this is an AIM-listed company, so the usual disclaimer applies. And the quick one-pager on the company is here, and this is on our website, should you wish to just go there. So we are AIM-listed, TCF. We're a brain-focused biotech therapeutics company, and we develop innovative therapeutics in brain disorders. So the trick with a number of brain disorders that are out there is choosing the right one, and the right one that a small-cap biotech can address well. The key areas, we're in addiction. I'm going to talk mostly about that this evening. It's called an OX1. It's a novel agent suitable for a number of addictions. And as a result of a raise we did at the beginning of this year, we're funded through to clinical readiness. That is the permission to give it to human volunteers first. We're funded to do that by about this time next year. So we have an asset in fatigue, which is a secondary and as yet unfunded asset, which is also class-leading potential. We have an asset, a legacy program called SFX01 from old EvGen days, which is a grant-funded program. If you're going to do very high-risk research, get somebody else to pay for it would be the philosophy. That's exactly what we're doing with our glioblastoma program in the Erasmus Medical Center in Rotterdam. We're a virtual company. We're highly capital efficient. We can turn the tap on and off or up and down as we wish. And for cash runway months, RX Securities, I'm sure you're aware of them, publish a cash runway analysis on a monthly basis. And we are in the top 20%, because we're a cash-burning organization. We're in the top 20% of all European listed biotechs when you measure us by the number of months of cash that remain. That means there's an 80% group of people who are very worried at the moment. We're in the top 20%, and we keep an eye on this. We were 19 last month, 18 the month before as a percentage of cash runway. So we're at the leading edge of cash runway. We've got enough money to get the job done on our addiction program. So our business model then, again, another introductory point, we developed an early POC, or proof of concept. Or what that means, sometimes you can get it done in lab data. Most often you have to create early clinical data before somebody comes and snaps up the asset, usually big pharma or big biotech for large amounts. And I've got a lot of financial numbers for you in this introductory presentation. If you look at the grey hair rating for our team, we've probably got 150 years worth of experience between us, even though there are not very many of us. And there's some more data on that coming about the experience of the team, because, of course, you should be investing in a management team. There we go. Oh, gone too far. Coming back on. Right. Okay, so here's the investment case for non-shareholders, or shareholders alike, actually. This is also available on our website. We've got a diversified portfolio in high-demand brain diseases. By that means we've got more than one shot at goal. We've got a lot of assets that can be provided, or even our lead asset can be directed in a number of very high value diseases and very high unmet need diseases, those where the clinical need is very high indeed. We have compelling data for those. We're scientists. I'm a neuroscientist. Helen is an electrophysiologist, pharmacologist. So we have compelling data. We're complimented actually on the quality of our data quite often. The markets we've chosen, and the trick that management should be doing, is picking the profitable markets. As you heard earlier with the brain health bioventrics programs, you look carefully at the market and you pick, in our case, the areas of medicine where this intervention is most likely to succeed for the patient and therefore provide a return for us as shareholders. The lead program, the Orexin-1 addiction program, is funded to a key inflection point. It's a major rite of passage in any biotech to get to permission to give to man. It's called IND enabling or CTA enabling. We've got it all the way through. We discovered it. We took it through. We proved that it can work in models. And we've got permission to give it to man because it's safe. The manufacturing is safe. And it's all done to the very highest human standards. And the leadership team, we've already covered. So the problem. Here's a quick snapshot of the problems we're dealing with. Addictions caused in the UK, if I can get the pointer to work, I'm missing the Jaguar aerial, you can see. The addictions in the top left-hand corner there caused 4,022 deaths, according to government statistics, in 2024. Jaguars going off the road and hitting people or mounting the pavement caused 1,600 road traffic deaths. So that gives you a sense of the human scale of the problem that we seek to deal with. The life years lost. There's a very elegant paper published in The Lancet in 2023. It's a meta-analysis. That's an analysis of thousands of different papers combined together in a very sophisticated way. And they used to say the rock and roll lifestyle could knock 10 years off your life. Well, it's a lot more than that, folks. It's 20. So substance abuse in an individual country versus the average life expectancy in that country knocks just over 20 years off the lifespan of an individual abuser. That's all substances. The substance I'm going to introduce to you today is food addiction, called binge eating disorder. The addiction to food, or the misuse of food, which is one of these, knocks 16, nearly 17 years off an expected lifespan. So these are serious, life-affecting, and on the bottom row, expensive issues in medicine. Addiction costs the UK, according to, again, government statistics, £21 billion per year. That's the cost of treatment, the cost of supportive care, lost work and lost productivity, family costs, families not being able to go to work because they're caring for somebody with an addictive disorder. Alcohol disorders, in particular, cost the NHS alone £3.5 billion a year. That's A&E admissions and all the other things that come from that particular disorder. Eating disorders, UK-wide, so not just the NHS, but the economy as a whole, eating disorders as a group, cost the UK nearly £5 billion a year. So there's a human cost and a financial cost to these diseases that we are seeking to treat. So to the prize then, the opportunity, the reason we're in business is to create meaningful new medicines and make money for shareholders. That's always been the biotech model, and we're a fairly typical biotech in that regard, except we think we've got some special stuff in there. This was a very recent one, October, actually, end of October. Endpoint's one of those news feeds, and they say our recent strides, causing a bit of a boom. So I'm going to hopefully provide you some data now to say that, yes, we are in a bit of a boom land for neurology and more particularly psychiatry. Big difference between the two. And here's some numbers. So J&J, 2 years ago, said, we're going to lead our pipeline with some neuroscience assets because we think this is the next big thing. This year, they made good on that promise, and they bought a company called Intracellular for $14.6 billion. Now, this is a company that is approaching approval of their first assets. So this is an asset that's gone through the clinical trials. And as you go further on towards market approval, the prize gets bigger and bigger. Eli Lilly also this year bought a company called SiteOne for $1 billion. And that was an earlier stage company. They were trying to produce a drug for pain, which is non-addictive, so that non-opioid or non-morphine-like. So serious pain, but without the addictive potential. That was worth $1 billion at late clinical stage. A little earlier, Karuna Therapeutics in the middle there, got bought by Bristol Myers Squibb, a company historically had never been interested in brain disease or jettisoned previously, 10 years ago, their brain disease assets. They announced the acquisition of Karuna outright for $14 billion. You see where I'm going with this? There's a very substantial prize to be had in this market segment at this point in time. AbbVie paid Cerevel shareholders $8.7 billion, and it goes on. So just to make my point doubly clear, that's the size of the prize if you get far enough down the development track. We've done some very specific, Helen and I have done some very specific analysis for you. So if we did a product deal, because the more typical thing is not a takeout by a big pharma, but an out-licensing deal. That is, they pay an upfront fee for unique access to your technology, and then there are several milestone payments down the line as the asset goes through the development, gets through eventually to the market, and it becomes a prescribed drug. So our market cap is sitting here. The average of these deals, quite recently, this is 2020 to 2025, last 5 years, it's gone up actually. At preclinical stage, when you're just about ready to hit the clinic, the average upfront payment, if you're lucky enough to get a deal or good enough to get a deal, is $26 million. And the total milestones, if you add them all together, assuming success at each stage of development, is $400 million in the funny sort of brownie color there. If you get to phase 1, that is, you've already taken it through all the safety testing, all the animal models, all the cell work, the phase 1 upfront goes up by almost double. So if you get to clinical phase, the upfront payment alone is $49 million. We're sitting at 6. If you do the total deal at phase 1, that's nearly $600 million as you progress through this. There's hot off the press analysis done by some external data sources, our own analyst at Singer Capital Markets, and our own management team who know this market very well. So we did a curation exercise, an exercise to say, is this a real deal? Take out the repeats and make it sensible. So hot off the press, it's our own analysis of publicly available data. It took days to do, but it does illustrate, I think, the opportunity that we are working on. This is our standard pipeline chart, and the funded program at the top there is an OX1, a bit more about that, not too much neuroscience, in substance use disorders. It also has potential use in anxiety disorders. We have a dopamine atypical uptake inhibitor, which has utility in fatigue, MS fatigue, other long COVID, fatigue that comes from chemo, and it's a brain fatigue lifter. So if you've got fatigue of brain origin, not the gym sort of fatigue that I wish I had more often, but the brain fatigue, it will lift that sort of brain origin fatigue, which comes with things like multiple sclerosis. We've got a couple of we've got one legacy program in a couple of areas, which I mentioned earlier, and we've got one out-licensing deal with a neurodevelopmental disorder company. But the real value driver for this business is currently our addiction asset. So to that, we've got an orexin-1 blocker, or an antagonist in pharmacological speak. It blocks the action of that system in the brain at its target. The beachhead, so when you develop drugs, you have a beachhead, and then you broaden the use of that drug to other diseases where hitting that particular target is of use to you. Our beachhead is binge eating disorder. Nothing approved in Europe, only one approved drug in the United States, which is, should we say, has its issues. The expansion opportunity of the same drug in the same technology, hitting the same bit of the brain, is in alcohol use disorder and cocaine use disorder. So any highly palatable, addictive thing that's generally considered bad for you, this should work in reducing the impulse to abuse. That's the essential mechanism. The value of it is it's got class-leading potential. In the lab, it's already the best in its class, and there are very few other members of this class that have made it any further. The USP, it's got the best profile of any orexin-1 blocker ever discovered. We know because we made the others to compare. It's the most selective, yes, discovered. I'll hang on to that one. Selectivity here, hitting the right receptor and not another receptor, is really, really, really important. I'll tell you why. So a bit of a brain picture here. It's a human brain on top, it's a rat brain on the bottom. They're very analogous, actually, which is why rat models are good for these. The orexin-1 receptor, when it's activated in the brain, and that's largely the purple section on that top brain slice there, that's a slice of the brain this way, sagittal section. And the cells start in this bit called the hypothalamus, which sits above the roof of the mouth and goes forward to the thinking part of the brain, the cerebral cortex. And it's involved with reward, feeding behavior, and anxiety when it's overactive. The orexin-2 receptor, selectivity word important again, regulates sleep and wakefulness. So if you block one, you reduce the impulse. If you block two, you go to sleep. What don't you want? Well, okay, so they're not abusing food, alcohol, or drugs because they're asleep all the time. That's not a valuable therapeutic intervention. What you want is people who can run a normal life without the impulse to do what's bad for them. So overactivation of the OX1 receptor is known in the literature to be implicated in all of these, and we've got proof of concept in a rat model of binge eating disorder. If you want to set a rat trap, don't use cheese. Use chocolate. This one used Cadbury's Dairy Milk, as it happens. It was done in the UK. And if you give them unpredictable amounts of Cadbury's Dairy Milk into the cage, they binge on it in the same way that a binge-eating patient might binge on pizza or 12 packets of Hobnobs in one setting. And then by administering our orexin-1 blocker, we reduce the binge, but they eat normally. That's the ideal profile. You're not affecting normal behavior, but you're stopping the impulse, the impulse to binge chocolate, even when you still put chocolate in the cage. And that's the proof of concept model. It's going to be published soon. So we've got that. It's very selective. And it's the most selective for 1 versus 2. So I'm going to tell you a bit about the green bit now on that human brain that's sliced this way. Wakefulness. The orexin-2 system promotes wakefulness, gives us alerting. So you can see why this system was developed in the brain. When we need to search for food or hunt, we activate this system and it gives us impulsivity and wakefulness. But there are two systems. We block one, we reduce the impulsivity when it's overactive. We block two, we go to sleep. It's generally accepted that you need 200 times more 1 versus 2 to stop having sedation as a side effect of your drug. We have 2,000-fold. That's the most ever discovered of any of the competitor molecules, of which there are about 2 or 3. 2,000 times better at hitting 1 than 2. So the chance of sedation or sleepiness on our drug is as near zero as you can possibly develop. Others in this class have been withdrawn. Other types of drug in research, they've been withdrawn from research because they cause sleepiness, which is a property you don't want. So what's the progress and the plan then? During 2024 and into February this year, we raised 5.51 million gross to fund taking this orexin-1 blocker, class leading, through to permission to give it to man, as we said. That is about halfway through now, because we've started spending that money at pace, run by Helen, who'll join me for questions. And it'll be the very last stage. So we're making enormous quantities of it. Previously, we've made test tube quantities of it, as you do in the lab. And now we're making bags of sugar-sized quantities of it, kilogram quantities. If you're a drug developer, that's pretty exciting. I know it doesn't sound very exciting, but if you're a drug developer, that's very exciting because you're scaling it up with efficiency. It gets more efficient, gets cheaper to make, and you can reliably make kilogram quantities of it. So for all of that is required to the very best regulatory standards by Q3 of next year, and we're on track, if not slightly early. So the market for binge eating disorder, then some more financial numbers largely, it affects about 1.5% of the population. It's more common than others you may have heard of. That's bulimia and anorexia nervosa. It's more common than both of those combined. And it's a bit of a hidden epidemic. So there are 4 million people which have this in the United States, 7 million across the EU because it's a larger population, and just under 2 million in Japan. So only about a quarter of individuals with binge eating disorder got any treatment for it. And that's mainly in the US, because that's the only place in the world where there is a drug available for binge eating, and it's called Vyvanse. Lisdexamfetamine. Clues in the last bit of the name, Vyvanse. Lisdexamfetamine. It's an amphetamine. So whilst it reduces the impulse to binge, it also wipes out your appetite, which is not a desirable property. And being an amphetamine, you can only prescribe it a week to 4 weeks at a time. You can't take it at night because it keeps you awake. So the nighttime binge is also vulnerable because some bingers binge at 3 o'clock in the morning and they raid the fridge. That is not a target for Vyvanse. Side effects, well, anxiety, agitation, the buzz that you get from an amphetamine are clearly there at a lower level, but still there with a drug like this. Amphetamines affect the heart rate, the boom, boom, boom. They affect the blood pressure in a bad way. So in general, it's limited in the sort of patient and the number of patients that you can give it to. And the other really key thing here is a lot of food abusing people have got a tendency to abuse other things as well, like cocaine. So if you're going to give a potentially abusable drug that gives you a rush to somebody who's likely to abuse drugs, it's generally considered not a good idea. And then there's risk of selling on, particularly in the United States, that people overprescribe it and it gets sold in the bars of southern Los Angeles. So those are the problems with this current SOC or standard of care, but yet there is a regulatory pathway. There is a way to get drugs for binge eating disorder approved. We conducted external market research for this. We interviewed key experts in this world, and we produced our own sales evaluation, and the low case exceeds $1 billion of sales for a product that is not abusable, doesn't keep you awake at night, reduces the binge, and doesn't affect your normal eating. So, and we've got, that's just, remember, the beachhead. If you look at the alcohol use numbers, they get very scary, scarily large in terms of the sales potential. So what about the competition? There are, we think 2 or 3 others that are slightly more advanced than us. Some of them have finished volunteer studies, and some of them are in clinical trials in patients with drug abuse disorders, for example. 3 of them have been withdrawn. Most recently, number 1 is AstraZeneca's. That was withdrawn last year, the end of last year, because of a thing called drug-drug interaction in the liver. So these people are likely to be on lots of other things. And if they all interact with each other in a bad way, you just can't develop that drug. And it was withdrawn by AstraZeneca because it interfered with this liver system, which gobbles up things called cytochrome P450. We've seen no interactions to date with our molecule. In efficacy, there was one with a Swiss company that didn't work. Now, the trick here is you need to sit on these receptors for about 80% of the time. Theirs didn't. If you don't sit in the brain for long enough, you don't reduce the impulse. We knew that this was going to happen because we knew theirs only sat on the brain receptor about half to 60% of the time. Ours sits on greater than 80% of the time through a single dose. So ours will exceed that threshold. So we've got a thing called greater than 80% receptor occupancy. It sits on the receptor for at least 80% of the time. That's long enough to have a medically relevant or therapeutically relevant effect. And finally, sedation somnolence, an earlier one, which was Johnson & Johnson. So some big names been working in this field. They had somnolence or sedation as a side effect in their early clinical trials because they were hitting 1, but they were also hitting 2, which is the one, if you remember, that put you to sleep. And that was the reason that particular drug was taken out of active development. So we've looked at all of these, and we've created a designer molecule that gets round all of the particular issues found by other people. So we must have some efficacy, of course. We've proven that in rat, and permission to give it to man will come next year. It has to be durable. That was the occupancy problem, non-abusable, so not an amphetamine or anything else that somebody might wish to abuse because they're a bit of an abusive personality type, and not create side effects like sleep. There have been a couple of deals there. So in our benchmark, these are below benchmark because they're quite old deals now. The AstraZeneca one was bought for $145 million. And Indivior bought another one from a previously listed company for a total number of milestones of $294 million. So those are real deals that have happened for this molecule some time ago, and the deal premiums are going up. So what else should you invest in? The management team and the board. We're not overloaded. Like Peter's comment earlier, this is my 39th year in this industry. I've been passionate about it since then. Alistair joined us at the beginning of this year, former CEO of Avacta, that many of you will have heard of and probably even invested in. Tony Heinonen was finance director of Pharon Pharmaceuticals, a Finnish company with an AIM listing. Alan Barge is a very seasoned drug developer from AstraZeneca, Amgen, and others. He's also a partner in a venture capital fund. Ed Wardle was nominated by our new largest shareholder, Northern Standard Limited, who came in with £1 million at the start of our raise at the beginning of the year. Helen is here, so you can see her during questions now. Nick Mallard, 30 years of project management, clinical project management experience in many companies that you'd recognize. Glenn Clark, our chief medic, over 25 years experience, and his last job in Big Pharma was head of translational medicine. That's taking that step into effectiveness for AstraZeneca. There is a nominee for the board, which is not yet nominated, because we acquired a company and they have, if they want to, they can nominate another director. So that's the management and board. So some news flow for you. This is what's happened. And I'm also going to tell you what's going to happen on this program. So we got, in September, one of the last patent countries to grant, Korea. We've got one more of the major markets yet to grant, and that's imminent. We've already got patent cover in the United States. That's a granted patent. We're not applied for it. We applied for it, and it's been given, and that is valid until 2039. Greater Europe was applied for slightly earlier, and so Greater Europe includes not just the EU, but the UK, Israel, Moldova, and other exotic places. And that's valid until 2038. So is the management good? Is the asset good? Does it have adequate long protection? So most recently, we've selected a formulation for use by mouth. This is an oral. It'll end up being a pill given once or twice a day. We've selected the formulation already in this work enabling us to give it to people. We've confirmed a second toxicology species. The regulators demand that we do toxicology to check there are no dangerous effects from the drug at high dose. We now have two species. One is the mini pig. Pigs are quite close to man, which is why a pig parasite will actually infect you quite readily. That's why you should cook your pork. And so it's quite close to man, and we've got very good data emerging in that species. So we'll know that a species very close to man will be a safe species. The first scale-up is complete. So we made 0.5 kilogram, and it was delivered early. So this is what I like to see in development programs, stuff working as we predicted it would work and delivering early. So congratulations, Helen, on that one. And we've started the synthesis of human-grade material. There's a whole different set of regulations that you have to do when you're making drugs for human use. It's much more expensive, takes a bit longer because we're doing it to the very highest purity, the very highest, and every step of that process has to be documented meticulously. And we've started that one already. So the program, the clinical enabling program, is going very well, slightly ahead of schedule. Yeah, we're done. So stuff that's coming then, more scale up of 10 kilograms for the toxicology work, human grade materials, finishing that work, getting it ready for clinical trials. The toxicology studies will start and finish next year. And they're 28 days long. All human enabling work will be done in the next 12 months. And then we'll be putting regulatory submissions in for man. So a quick run through then, and this is on our website, so I'm not going to slavishly go through it. We have a diversified portfolio. We're targeting the right diseases. We've got great data so far on those diseases, and each of those are in huge markets, 40 billion to 67 billion in the addiction market alone, worldwide. We've funded our lead program to a very important inflection point, permission to man, and we've got the team to deliver it. So that, I hope, gives you a very quick run through on a very focused, refinanced and flourishing company. Thanks very much. Helen, do you want to join?
So we've got a few minutes for questions.
She might ask some hard ones.
Yeah, Helen's going to join Huw on stage for these. Again, anybody online, please type in your questions, and I'm keeping an eye on the online questions coming in. Question from Tim in the room.
Right, you didn't talk an awful lot about the provenance of your top two.
Yeah.
I know the provenance,
yeah.
But it would help if perhaps other people did. My understanding was they were developed by Shire initially, and Shire was sold to Takeda.
Yep.
And then Takeda discarded them and prioritised them. So they were up for sale, and the predecessor company actually bought them.
Exactly right.
So why, given that they're all first in class, and well, the lead drug is first in class, why would Takeda have got rid of it?
Yeah, great question. So the history is the know-how came from Shire when they closed the Basingstoke research unit. Shire made a decision to stop doing early research. And this was a very early research program at the time. It's much later now because we've spent millions on it. So Shire closed Basingstoke and focused on two things: orphan diseases and late-stage clinical assets. Stuff that's already in the clinic, because they had to prioritize somehow. So we met some of the key scientists from that site, looking at a lot of other potential assets. And we liked these the best for good reasons. We did external market research on them, and we acquired them. So that means that Shire was then bought by Takeda, and Takeda is now also a minor shareholder in TheraCryf PLC. But to be clear about what we acquired know-how. We acquired some ideas. Everything you see on screen was developed by us from that point. Do you want to come in?
This might be worth adding their rationale for starting the programs originally. So Shire were and are the developer of Vyvanse. And at the time, it only had a label for ADHD, and they were going for a label for binge eating disorder. And they've really grown that market and grown awareness around that market and provided education such that I think at its peak, it was about 5 or 6 billion. And around a third of that revenue was for the binge eating disorder. And when you see only addresses a small proportion of the overall patient population, what they saw as an opportunity then was developing a drug that didn't have the liabilities of Vyvanse, that could address that patient population and the broad patient population. So that's why they started the discovery program on the orexin.
They were seeing, clinical trials, fridge raiders.
Yeah. Well, and they could, because of the stimulant properties of Vyvanse, they were restricted to a small proportion of the overall available patients. So they wanted to address the whole market. They wanted to, times 10, times 15 that revenue.
Another one? Me?
Gentleman here. Thank you for the excellent science. Of course, personally, I'm bothered about this, dimension of that. Anyway. And you have made a compelling case for the opportunities of the products you are manufacturing or developing. But my question is about the money aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
In spite of all this, what are the factors that causing your share price coming down and down and down? And could you overcome it in a year's time? Thank you.
Thank you. That's an excellent question again. Share price performance is based on some historical factors, like the old products that are now legacy products for us. And actually, whilst we're excited about getting assets through key gates in the development program, I don't think the market understands it, and we've got to do a better job of that, and understands just how important passing these milestones is. And we've got to do a better job on that, to be honest. Our share price is now stable after raising money, and we've got the money to get a major milestone through. And then it's a matter for the market. So that we've applied for permission to give it a man. All the boxes have been checked, and there are a lot of them. That we hope, and our chairman hope, our board agree, that is a major milestone for any development program, and we should see rewards at that point. But at the moment, this is a bond that matures in a year. That's the way to look at it. We're not worried about the share price currently, because we know we've got a great market-leading asset potential, and that we will achieve a major milestone through 2026.
Hi, great talk, brilliant. I don't know anything about this ballpark at all, but just a little question is about binge eating. I've heard so many people taking Ozempic and all those drugs from Eli Lilly, and they're doing brilliantly. And people who sort of binge like nothing on earth, they're taking that drug, they don't want to eat at all. How is that sort of affecting things? It's only just, I don't know anything about this market at all. Only a question, but I know so many people who are taking it.
Yes, thanks. Do you want to take that one?
I'll go for that one because it's a question we get asked a lot. And they are doing trials. So to get a label, so to get reimbursement for an indication, you have to do a pivotal trial. And they are taking the Manjaros, semaglutides, into binge eating population in obese binge eaters. So it's a very clear definition. It causes weight loss, obviously. Around 60% of binge eating patients do not have any problem with their weight. So they're not overweight. So they don't need to lose weight. They don't want to lose weight. There are obviously other liabilities that come with the GLP mechanism as well that probably wouldn't be appropriate for them. Another sort of clarification is people who are overeating are not necessarily binge eaters. So there's a very clear definition of what a binge eater is, how it's classified. You eat maybe 12,000 calories in one sitting, maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. So actually, I'm confident that it will have opportunities in a proportion of the population, but not the overall population. So, yeah.
There's no reason they can't work together in those people who need a little bit of extra. There's no reason these two can't work together. Because we're doing the brain bit and we're reducing the impulse. If people want to reduce binge eating behavior and lose weight, well, that's a possibility.
Essentially take them together, or if you're overweight, you could taper off onto an orexin blocker.
Yeah.
And that's a big consideration for not just binge eating, but anyone on a GLP at the moment is what do you do, right? When you get to a weight that you're happy with, because you need to taper off, go on to some kind of maintenance therapy.
Questions for Huw or Helen? No, there's nothing coming in either. I think it's a bit technical for some people, isn't it?
Well, that's the problem. That's why we try and do it.
Go away and read it all over again, yes. So, well, thank you, Huw. Thank you, Helen, for coming today, and excellent presentation. Look forward to hearing more news as you go through the process.
Pleasure.
Okay, thank you.